we continue with the day today, we hear of the news of Mr. Soli Sorabjee, Lion of the Bar, passing away. Today is a day we're not going to be mourning his loss, but celebrating his life. And joining us to do this is someone extremely special. He's former Additional Solicitor General. He's a senior advocate of the Supreme Court. But most importantly, he's someone who's had a very close, a very tender relationship with Mr. Soli Sorabjee, Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who shared a common boundary wall with Soli Sorabjee for many years and has also been his neighbor. Dr. Singhvi, we're on a melancholic, pensive note today, but I'd like you to take us through the decades you've known Mr. Sorabjee, some of the anecdotes you've shared with him, and how you would like to remember him, taking a trip down memory lane.
Well, as you've noticed, Soli and I share a common boundary wall for almost 20 years. Some of those years, he of course deserted the common wall because he was Attorney General and he shifted to another accommodation. But mostly he was here and I've been here. About a week ago at 11 o'clock in the night, his wife Zena called me saying that they both have COVID and he's being taken in an ambulance to Max Hospital. But she called me again later in the night, 12 o'clock, and next day saying that he's quite stable, quite all right, quite happy. And then again after 2 days, she called to say that his only problem is he's very fidgety because he wants people to meet and talk. Otherwise, he's fine. So it was a shock to me when I learned from her today morning that last night his heart suddenly got some problem and they could not revive him and he died in the night or early in the morning today. Now, Rhythm, when you talk of reminiscences, it's difficult to remember everything, but let me tell you that the field and the art of drama and mimicry had a great loss when Soli joined law. Just like the field of jazz music had a great loss when Soli joined the law. Of course, he cultivated these two passions as a hobby, but I think in each he could have excelled even if he had become a professional. And as a young lawyer, I remember there used to be sometimes, especially if you were doing a seminar or you were out of Delhi and staying in the same hotel, 3-4 of us, no more, always a small group, congregate in Soli's room. We're all much younger. I'm about 30 years younger than him. And he would become younger than us in that gathering. And I remember in those days we used to have a lawyer, I lost touch, Divyang Chaya, who was a very big, bulky man, and he used to wear shorts. And he used to act out what Soli used to mimic. And it was such a funny scene. You had yourself in splits. And you could not see this man next morning as the staid, precise lawyer or attorney general. He had this great ability to switch on and switch off. So mimicry and actual live sessions is what I have shared with him. He was a master of many areas of law. He's practiced in many areas. I have assisted him as a young junior. Then, of course, I've been with him and I've opposed him in a large number of cases, almost till the very end, till he stopped really appearing a few years ago. But if there were two areas where his eyes would light up in law, or he would have that glint in his eyes, his passion areas. I'm just trying to say, if you were to ask me two areas of his in law, one was clearly public law, the whole area of constitutional law, administrative law, and the other was law and media or media-related issues. Since I had done my PhD on emergency powers also in the field of public law, we shared this common interest and had endless discussions on the nuances. And as you know, as a young lawyer and subsequently as a middling lawyer and then as a senior lawyer, he cut his teeth on all these public law cases, which made him reach the top pinnacle. Satwan Singh, the right to travel, the right to passport, the right to travel case. Then the Maneka, the passport case, Maneka Gandhi. Then Swadeshi, post-decisional hearing. Then Bommai above all. And now as a senior counsel, do many of these Uttarakhands and Arunachals and Bihar and Maharashtra, change of government, defection, president's rule. And as I dive deep into that jurisprudence, I realized the importance of Bommai, which single-handedly established that platinum standard mark, gold mark, platinum mark, which Soli had argued. I remember also that
Yes. And
just when I finished law in Cambridge, I had this weird, inexplicable passion that the best area of law to practice in is excise. I don't know what misled me, what got into my brain, but that bee was in my bonnet. And therefore, I said the best person to practice excise is Ravindra Narayan of then J.B. Dadachandji, and I joined them. Lasted all of 3 months because I got sick of excise in about 3 to 4 months. But in those 3 to 4 months, excise law was developing. This is in the 80s. Almost every area of excise law had not developed in law then. And we used to have this Soli leading, Ravindra assisting, and then one of us assisting Ravindra in what was known as the St. Stephen's bench of Delhi High Court. Chief Justice Prakash Sarai and Justice Kirpal. Both of them very proud of their Stephen's lineage. They would get up for supposedly coffee at 11:30, but actually for what was known in Stephen's as a fag, that is a smoke. And they had the excise roster, and everything from post-manufacturing expenses to strangers, arm's length dealing, packaging, all that was in this bench. And Soli would stand up and then we notice, stay. And we as juniors were told, don't leave the file there, because this is a developing area of law and you don't want plagiarists to, steal your file, so to speak. There were interesting times. As I search more in the recesses of my memory, I am reminded of the Sundarnagar office where he occupied, as far as his office is concerned, the top floor. His residence was jealously guarded on the ground floor. Nobody's allowed there, although once or twice I was amongst the privileged few. But you'd climb those stairs, no lift at the top. And there was this very sparse 2-room combination, one Soli and one for his staff. And you'd have these precise, short conferences where he would scribble down at the last inside cover of that file, just about 10 pages. And he would go away with the feeling that he's not quite understood the case. And this was almost 90% morning conferences, unless it was a detailed regular hearing, which was the previous night. And then half an hour later, 1 hour later in the courts, you would find that with such dexterity, he would spin those 6 points and those 6 pages into a story that willy-nilly either the judge agreed with him or gave some via media and some relief, even in very weak or undeserving cases. I must commend Soli that not necessarily because he would like everybody equally or, necessarily had the same view of every junior, but his chamber has produced very eminent juniors, which is the hallmark of a good senior. The Salves, the Gopal Subramaniam, the Ganesh, Justice Uday Lalit now. I mean, I'm just offhand remembering some names. They're all from Soli's chamber. In fact, when I came, I'm slightly younger in age group, so I wanted to join Soli's chamber and I found it overcrowded. So I couldn't. And Fali never kept a junior in those days. Even later on did not, except for one. So he has promoted his juniors a lot. And there's a whole stable of excellent horses coming out of that particular chamber. I remember in particular as a young lawyer, a much, much younger lawyer in 1987, for some strange reason, and partly on Soli's recommendation, 3 people were asked to speak on the US bicentennial, that is the 200th year of the US Constitution, which, as you know, is in 1787. So in 1987, the US hosted a conference, multi-country, in Karachi. And the 3 chosen from India were Soli Sorabjee, Harish Salve, and Abhishek Singhvi. And we had a great time in Karachi. And I remember something which I should shyly confess today, telling them there that I made the blunder, in fact, the criminal offense without quite knowing it, that from Karachi, I took a short flight to Mohenjo-daro, which I said I cannot leave Pakistan without seeing Mohenjo-daro. And realized much later, to my horror, that you required a city visa. And my city visa was only Karachi, not Mohenjo-daro. But all my Pakistani friends fully applauded my decision. And fortunately, nobody squealed till I got back to the safe shores of India. Soli's other passion was, of course, books. As his neighbor, I've spent many enjoyable moments in his so-called den. There was more than one den, but the music and the books were in the front part of his room, just as house, just as you enter. And he would regale you, and he would tell you how terrible he would feel if somebody asked for a book. And, sometimes he could not say no, although he had started saying no. And then if he gave a book, that book was lost or torn or not looked after. Each of his books was carefully indexed and kept, very repeatedly read and marked, and shows the sign of a very, very comprehensively well-read person. Two issues of regrets, and I'll end on that.
Yes.
One regret is Soli's own, a very strange, inexplicable, and I would say a wrong regret. It's typically old-fashioned. His 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter, have done exceedingly well. One is a top doctor in Mumbai, another is a top car expert in Mumbai, and a third is a top lawyer, Zia Modi, one of the largest firms in India, if not the largest. And yet, in front of everyone,
that's right.
Soli would say, oh, but Zia should have become a counselor. So I would say in front of Zia, I said, Soli, this is a completely irrational regret you have. He said, no, he was that old-fashioned kind. He said, no, you should go into counsel. The other is my own regret, because I've told him many times personally. In fact, I repeated it about a month ago when I sat with him on the lawn next to my house, about a month and a half ago, at a great distance, of course, but we sat and chatted in the morning. And I said, look, you have been talking Soli for the last 5 years that you want to write a public law book. And it'll never happen unless you just get down to it. And he kept saying, yes, I have to do it. In fact, before that, almost 10 years ago, he said, this summer and the next 2 summers, I'm not going anywhere, not even to beloved London if I can help it, and sit here and write it. And he never got it done. At least I know about whether he got some of it done. But it certainly was not published in his lifetime. It would make a great book.
Yes.
And if there are materials which he has partly written, they should be collected and written into a book. The other is, of course, what I also told him repeatedly, that he should write his memoirs. That again, I think he wanted to, but did not really get down to it. At least it is not officially known or published. And possibly his family will put it together in case he has some written down details. I think Soli would have also made a great ambassador of India in many countries. And possibly till a certain age, he was ready to take it up. But fate had willed otherwise. We just celebrated his 91st birthday. I, in fact, wrote a fresh script in a book taken out in his honor. And let me tell you that till the very end, though clearly for the last 7-8 years, he was frail, very frail. Clearly, he was getting old, but his mind was perfect, alert, fully cognizant. Memory was more than good, I would say very good. It was only trapped in a somewhat slow body because he could not move fast, etc. So I think he could have lived longer. He should have lived longer, but he had a very full life, and as you rightly say, the diversities of his life deserve to be celebrated much more than mourning his death.
Yes. Dr. Singhvi, that very aptly sums it, because I believe that's how I want to, and we want to look at Soli Sorabjee. I've always noticed, like you mentioned, his birthday 9th of March, there was a lot of glee, a lot of happiness, childlike innocence with which he used to send the emails for his birthday, after which there used to always be a personal call, a personal touch, inviting for his birthdays. So that childlike innocence was always there with Soli. Not only that, when one visited him, when one asked him for an interview or a chat, there was always a cup of tea that he used to love having with his beloved cookie. If it was from the United Kingdom, like you mentioned, he was always happier. He was always happy, like you did mention, in London. But what also one remembers is his love for Shakespeare, his love for literature, and of course his jazz. He has to be remembered and celebrated, like you said. It's going to be a celebration, viewers. And like Dr. Singhvi said, this is the way we want to remember a lion of the bar, Soli Sorabjee. Thank you, Dr. Singhvi, for your time. we'll continue to do throughout the day our tribute to the Lion of the Bar, Mr. Soli Sorabjee.